This is the Begin Within podcast, where we believe real, lasting health and fitness requires you to start inside before you work out. I'm your host, Nate Slegger, and I'm here to show you behind the scenes of fitness. You already know exercise is good for you, but what about all the other things in life that affect your fitness? If you're looking for extra motivation to get started or to make sure you keep going, this is the place for you.
Produced by BeginWithin.fit.
Improving health is about so much more than just losing weight. But I realize weight loss might be the goal that brought you here to the Begin Within podcast. That's why I wrote my latest book, 5 Ways to Stop Wrecking Weight Loss, to reveal the 5 areas that I see are most overlooked by the people that I work with who want to lose weight. Each one of the chapters in this free ebook describes that specific area that you need to focus on to improve your health and get great permanent results. And it also links back here to episodes of the podcast where we've had experts on the show talking about that specific area, so you can benefit from those previous episodes while you're learning about how to maximize the results that you're after. You can get your free copy of my ebook, 5 Ways to Stop Wrecking Weight Loss, by going to beginwithin.fit/ebook or going to the link in the show notes. Now is a great time to do a little multitasking while you're listening to the start of this episode. Head over to grab your free copy of my book, 5 Ways to Stop Wrecking Weight Loss. If you missed the URL, here it is again, beginwithin.fit/ebook, or there is a link in the show notes for you. Grab your copy, and now let's get on with today's episode. My guest today is Jeff Essen. He is a naturopathic practitioner in Rosemount, Minnesota, where he has had a clinical practice for the past 19 years. And he is here today to talk about autoimmune diseases. We've touched on that in previous episodes just a bit, but you're gonna love the way that he digs in and explains the mechanisms behind this grouping of diseases. In particular, what I would love for you to listen for is his input on food, the importance of the food choices that we make, and then the importance of how we manage stress. Please enjoy my interview with Jeff Essen.
Autoimmune disease is your body attacking itself. There's obviously deeper and deeper levels of this as it goes along. But the initial view is one of two things is happening. They're designated Th1, Th2, different parts of the immune system. Th1 would be your white blood cells. There's a general big grouping of them. These are the cells that are capable of killing off your own tissue. Now, what if there's an overabundance of them? There's so many of them, and they're indiscriminately killing things. That's the Th1 kind of autoimmunity. And some different versions of different autoimmune diseases are designated Th1 dominant. Okay. But then there's the Th2 side, which is the antibodies. And we all have the last 3 years heard a lot about antibodies. And so if indeed your immune system begins to put antibodies on your tissue in an overabundance indiscriminately, making a mistake and putting it on the wrong protein structure, then that is a Th2 dominant autoimmune disease. Again, there are those that are generally designated as that, although with each designation, Th1 or Th2, it's about 80% of people with an autoimmune disease match the typical type. About 20% of people are exactly the opposite. So it's a little bit difficult to nail down exactly.
Okay. Wow. All right. Is there different triggers for each of those, Th1, Th2, or
when it comes to the word trigger or causal factor, whichever version we want to use there, there's never any one. In medicine, there's very few times that you can make absolute statements and know for a fact that they'll never change. With an autoimmune disease, there's never ever one causal factor or trigger. There's a blend of things in different people. In other words, one person with multiple sclerosis will walk in the door and say, I have MS. We'll say, which version do you have? Meaning that they may have a percentage of it be from infection. They may have a percentage of it be from food allergies. They may have a percentage of it be from emotional issues. And those three things equal 100% of the causal factor leading to their disease. But the next person who walks in with MS has a different percentage of different things. And so that's one of the things we can say about autoimmunity. There is no one central cause of any autoimmune disorder, although there are those that are more predominantly one thing or the other. But everybody's got their own individual percentages. And so it's difficult from a practitioner standpoint to actually nail somebody down and say, well, MS, here's your program. You can't just do that. They have their own individual thing. So we as practitioners on the natural health side have to individualize that person, go through the interview process and do all the testing and say, well, your version is this.
Gotcha. Wow. Thanks for explaining that. I haven't heard it, quite explained in that way, but it makes a lot of sense. And I think it helps us understand probably why there's become a lot of misunderstandings, or I feel like maybe mystery around the topic of autoimmune diseases. So I know you mentioned a few. Could you just kind of go through some of the things that you're noticing are showing up as you're helping support those who have
The
autoimmune
old
disease?
checklist. I call it the autoimmune checklist. Yeah.
Okay.
And so it's, infection is always the thing we want to look for first because it's the most solvable problem. In other words, there are times, like giving the example of MS, and actually several other autoimmune diseases, the virus called Epstein-Barr virus, sort of the long chronic version of mononucleosis, has been recently found in numerous studies to say is that this is a principal causal factor for your immune system to be making the mistake to put antibodies on your myelin sheath of your nerves that match, because the Epstein-Barr virus protein, the structure of that protein, looks so much like your myelin sheath that your own body can't tell the difference between the virus and your own cells.
Mm.
So here's this immune system in its well-intentioned defending you because of the close proximity of structure is to make a mistake, and it says, well, in the short-term view, we need to protect you from this virus, so we're going to put antibodies to the virus. Now, in the meantime, there's going to be some byproduct-friendly fire where we're going to put antibodies on our own cells as well, but we have plenty of those cells. For now, that's fine. We'll let those die off just so that we can kill this virus. Here's the problem. This virus never goes away. 95% of adults have Epstein-Barr virus. So then that trigger never does go away. So that's how infections can get into what's called a molecular mimicry pattern, and is the top one that you see a lot of times. Now, we can, again, solve those problems by knocking the numbers of the organisms down. If it's bacteria, mold, fungus, yeast, parasites, mycoplasms, and viruses, there's ways we can knock the numbers down, and the farther down the numbers go of these organisms, the less antibody production there is, so therefore less of that mistaken identity. And that does tend to do really well with people who have that infection-generated trigger.
Okay.
Next in line would probably then be food allergies. There's a lot of foods that cause problems that generate autoimmune responses. Number one on the list is gluten, or more properly, gliadin. A structure that is in wheat, barley, and rye, and other wheat derivatives. But in that case, that is a huge generator of confusion for the immune system from a digestive standpoint. Now, here again, your body's trying to say, I can't digest this food. No human being can properly digest wheat or gluten. But the body's trying to defend itself against that. And the byproduct is, oh, well, this tissue looks an awful lot like that gluten. Let's produce the antibodies again. That's kind of number two on the list. So if we were to generically say, what are the two biggest things that you can do to lessen your chance of having autoimmunity or lessen a certain autoimmune cascade? Bring organisms down to minimum and stop eating gluten. Right there, if we did that, that would take care of probably about 40% of people's problems right off the bat. Now, after that, it's an additional list: toxic chemicals in our environment, especially what are known as these plastics. People have heard of the BPA, bisphenol A, which is this, the plastic water bottles and this kind of stuff, the plastic wrap on your food and everything. That's a big one. We then get into toxic heavy metals: mercury, cadmium, aluminum, and so on. That's an additional, the one that generates by free radicals, just a pure inflammatory response of the body having this toxic thing, and it can often cause huge mistakes of that more Th1, over dominant white blood cells just rushing into indiscriminately kill everything in response to those toxins. Those are also big, contributors, and people typically are going to get those from a multitude of different sources. But vaccines, especially before like 2004, and then also then the metal fillings that people get in their mouth are huge uploads of that. But for those of us who are somewhat older, we grew up in the age where there was leaded gasoline. I've got lead in my bones because as a child there was lead in our environment, and it incorporated itself along with the calcium into my bones. So when I do metal detoxes every year, I feel the lead coming out of my bones. It's still there. So we're just inundated. These are ubiquitous in our environment. We're never going to get away from them. You can't live in a bubble. Even if you did, the bubble's made of plastic, so it's kind of hard to get around that. So we do have to realize that we have to do some version of detoxification. And in your world, you might know the term autophagy, that idea where if you work the body hard enough, it's going to excrete toxins. One of the big, an interesting unknown thing is that metal toxins like aluminum, cadmium, mercury, and so on can be detoxified by ATP. Adequate ATP production by itself, a lot of energy within a cell will spit the toxins out. But so many people are so fatigued and they don't produce sufficient energy that they can't even perform that on their own.
Wow.
After this, we get into things like emotions. Stress is a direct link to autoimmune disorders. And of course, you can talk about stress with any disorder you want to name. But specifically, there are studies demonstrating pathways of certain emotional stress patterns that will go and confuse the immune system enough to cause it to make mistakes and either tag or attack the wrong tissues. There are other factors that are lesser known from the homeopathic world. We have the thing called miasms. Miasms, you can think of it as genetics, but not the actual genes or chromosomes, but a pattern that exists outside those genes and chromosomes that influences the behavior of your DNA to be incorrect. In other words, instead of a normal response, you're going to have an inflammatory response or a degenerative response because the miasm will shift that. So I'll see that as usually a partial contributor, very rarely a primary, but it makes, it's a little thing that makes everything else worse. And those are all the big ones. And so as I go through my autoimmune checklist with people, very commonly, typically somebody walks in my door for the first time. Yeah, we're going to be killing bugs. We're going to be getting rid of these infections, bringing the total microbial load way, way down. Now, some people, though, are in such bad condition that we can't handle a detox. You can't kill bugs. You can't get rid of chemicals. You can't get rid of metals. You can't work with them until their inflammation is down. And if you want to talk generically about autoimmune processes, we say it's inflammatory. Yeah. And whether it's the inflammatory trigger and antibody production or it's the inflammatory white cell response, it's inflammation nonetheless. And so there's a lot of very good natural, nutritional and herbal and homeopathic and essential oil anti-inflammatory things that we can do to bring down this. And I call it triaging a person. You recognize that term, triage. You take the worst thing and you stabilize that and make it a less serious thing. And you keep on going down and down and down until it's no longer a crisis. Well, I have people walk in the door and they need to be removed from their crisis quickly and immediately because every day that they're having an autoimmune disease, they're destroying cells. And some people are destroying cells at a rapid rate and it's been going on for a long time. So we need to get them out of that. Well, then once they're stabilized, let's kill bugs. Let's clean up your liver and get all these toxins out. Let's start working on metal removal. For some people, it does involve removal of the metal fillings in their teeth. A lot of good detoxification, and sometimes it does take, I can say somebody who's on a metal detox, this might take a year to 2 years from an oral supplementation standpoint to finally get rid of all the metal down to the point where it's no longer causing disease. So it's never, it's never a sprint, it's a marathon. um, but all of these things have a way of being dealt with once they're identified. And the individual walks in the door and they're 70% microbial. 70% of their problem is they got too many bugs. Well, they can get rapid recovery because we can kill the bugs rapidly. That person walks in the door, and if 80% of their problem is metal, we have a long road to go before they're going to really feel symptom relief. So
Gotcha.
this is just one of those. You can't say there's any patent easy formula for any autoimmune disease, and there will never ever be a single drug that will resolve every autoimmune disorder. It just simply can't happen because of multiple causal factors.
Gotcha. I'm curious about, I don't want to say prevention. Maybe that's the wrong word, but what are some of the things that we can do to maybe support ourselves from getting over that threshold in the first place? I know you touched on things like gluten. Are there other things that you'd recommend that we could do to manage our health?
I mean, you could kind of live what you would call an anti-inflammatory lifestyle.
Okay.
And that means, yes, food is primary among them. And so you would look up, well, what foods are the most inflammatory foods? Grains are the worst one. Dairy is the secondary one. There's things like lectins, which are unprotected seeds in some plants. There are the nightshade family of plants, tomatoes, peppers and chilies, eggplant, and white potatoes. Those tend to cause more pain-related structural syndromes like rheumatoid arthritis, things like that. And so realistically speaking, food will make a gigantic difference in somebody's overall, here's what you can do to bring down inflammation. There are other inflammatory triggers like blood sugar management. Insulin is an inflammatory molecule. And so no matter what you're doing for blood sugar, the more insulin you're constantly pumping out or having to crisis manage, the more inflamed you are. And this is why there's all the byproducts of diabetes is that, the neuropathy and the eye problems and the cardiovascular problems. It's because there's rampant inflammation going on in all those tissues. So blood sugar management, I would say, also put as a big marker of you got to get that under control. And that kind of goes along with food, but of course, again, more from your world, proper exercise, proper stress management, because the adrenals play a role in management of your blood sugar as well.
Nice.
So
Good.
those are the big ones. Yeah, when it comes to the detoxes that I spoke of earlier, though, really you should consult a professional for those. Don't buy the detox in the box off the shelf at the local health food store. We need to be a lot more specific, targeted, and careful. Many people that I see need metal detox, but their body simply isn't ready to do so. And we don't simply want to remove metal from cells, shuffle it around, and have it resettle somewhere else and cause more damage. We got to be very careful, have very professional tools to do those. So we can, if anybody's listening to this and they think, why better detox, go see your local naturopath. Some chiropractors do a very good job of this. There's other natural health care practitioners who can assist you with detox. Don't just try to do it on your own or what you see on the internet.
Okay. Nice. I'm curious, and I ask this a lot on the show. If you were able to talk to someone that just they haven't been doing much of anything to support themselves in terms of moving in a healthier direction, and you could just make one single recommendation for them to get started, I'm curious to know. And I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, and it's hard to just narrow it down. Like what I want to know is what area of health for you is the thing to give attention to.
I would say the thing that is short term is diet, but if we were to talk long term, stress management.
Okay.
Meaning that the diet is a short-term, acute, very solvable problem. Just alter what you shove in your mouth, and that can make a gigantic difference in your life. That can roll entire health pictures over. However, if somebody has long-term chronic stress and the body is having to constantly respond to what I call, running away from the bear, if you're constantly running away from the bear, your body has to make sacrifices. It has to say, well, I can't supply the resources for this survival mechanism, which is obviously the first priority. Well, we're going to borrow from over here. We're going to borrow from over here. We're going to take this resource. We're going to shunt it over here. Blood flow is going to change. If these things don't get blood now, that will kill you. Just by itself, that will kill you. So some version of stress management, I see a lot of people, in my testing processes that I do in the office, I see a lot of people come up with meditation or breathing exercises. One that comes up a lot, nature walk. Go outside and be among plants, listen to the birds, hear the wind. These things are foundational to how you're supposed to be living all the time. And so many people are just stuck inside looking at their screens. They just don't get out there. I was just shocked the other day in the news. I heard the statistic that the average child in elementary school is getting less than 1 hour of outdoor activity and spend 7 hours on their phone. That just is not the way we're supposed to be living. And that looking at that phone by itself is stress. No matter what you could be on the most peaceful, lovely website in the world. It's stress just to look at that phone.
Wow. That like you said, I think that is a pretty scary statistic. Especially I think about how I grew up. Like we're just out every chance we got, we're outside. So wow. Thanks for sharing all that. I appreciate your perspective and all your knowledge. As someone's listening, if they're curious to go deeper, to follow your work, to get in touch with you, what might be the best way for them to do that?
Well, probably just go to our website, wholelifeclinic.com. So WHOLELIFECLINIC.com. And that's got some of the basics that we do here. I use a couple of different testing methodologies called biofeedback, two different machines that have their advantage. I also do things like blood tests and hair saliva tests to look at more quantitative analysis of the body. And sometimes I just consult with people and they say, I have this problem. And because of the distance, it becomes an issue. Fine. I can work with you online or on a phone too.
Okay, awesome. Jeff Essen, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for sharing your knowledge.
Glad to be here, Ned. Thanks.
I want to thank Jeffrey once again for coming on the show, and the link is in the show notes for you to get in touch. wholelifeclinic.com. That's WHOLE lifeclinic.com. The link is in the show notes for you to get in touch, ask questions, and get access to the resources that Jeffrey has available for, of course, his patients and others. So check that out there if you'd like. I want to give you one action step. Here we talk so much about just taking little steps forward toward healthier, just being healthier versions of ourselves. And we've talked at length so many times about nutrition. And of course, that is a massive pillar when it comes to health. Gigantic is the word that was used in our conversation. So what I want to do is just steer away from that one for today and focus on the area of stress. And so often here we've talked about that in terms of our relationship with ourselves, right? The way that we manage emotions, the way that we are taking care of our connection with ourselves. And that was just highlighted so well in our interview. And so I think that it would be good for us as a result. If there's one thing that we take moving forward, it might just be to take a look at how stress is showing up in our lives and what proactive things we're doing to manage stress. If that's the right word. That's the word I keep using here today. But what things are built into our lives that are helping us to have the relationship that with our emotions that we would like, that is fulfilling for us. And what I loved is it doesn't have to be difficult. We don't have to change everything, but we can just take a small step forward. a small step to a healthier place. Just take a small step. And the one that personally I love the most, the thing that for me is one of my go-tos when the things I do normally in my regular routine are maybe, I don't know, I feel like maybe I just need a little bit more than normal, is one of the things that Jeffrey mentioned in our interview, and that was simply get outside. Get outside. Get outside. Get outside in the trees. Get outside by some water. Listen to the birds. Just sit or maybe take a walk. It doesn't take long. Maybe just a few minutes. And if we could build that into our regular routine and not just have it be routine, right? Where we just blow through, okay, I took my walk around the block or whatever, but to really enjoy being outside and start to notice some of those things, the breeze, listen to what's happening out there. Create that deeper connection with nature. It can help us so much as we work on stress, because you know what? The stress is not going to go away, right? So we can continue to find better ways to manage it. And if there's one episode perhaps that you could go back to that comes to mind recently that we did, that was episode 96 with Dr. Adrian Udeem, how spending time in nature improves your health. We had a really cool conversation there. I know that you'll enjoy it. So go back and check that one out if you want to do a little bit more learning. Have another expert tell you how important it is. Go check that one out. But again, I want to thank Jeffrey Essen for being here on the show. Link is in the show notes if you want to connect with him and his work. But I want to thank you for being somebody who's concerned with becoming a better version of yourself. That's why we're here. That's why I'm here every single week, is because I'm in the process with you. I want to be a healthier version of myself. I know that you do as well. And I want to celebrate you for that. I want to thank you for being here. And if you would be so kind, 2 things. You can pick which one you want to do today. One, take a screenshot of yourself listening, or a picture of where you're at as you're listening. Post it to your stories and tag me. That would be awesome. I would absolutely love it. The other would be to rate and review the show in your podcast player so that others can find the show and benefit from the awesome information that we're sharing here every single week. Thank you once again. I hope you have a great day, and please continue to take good care of yourself. Have a great day.